since I already posted the last today, I might as well post another. This is against a pretty novel Parthian build, I think. I got Arverni with the random faction selection, and my opponent, whose name is line, is picking Parthia. And when I picked Arverni, he instantly counter-picked Parthia, and he had his army ready. So that kind of tells me he's picked a counter build to an Arverni build, which is very apparent from looking at this very atypical Parthian army. Let's go over the builds. He has 4 armored horse archers, very decent horse archer units. He has a unit of royal cataphracts, a noble horse archer general, so a total of 5 horse archers. Then he has 3 or maybe just 2 Parthian foot archers, and 3 Parthian foot archers and 3 mercenary peltasts, so a total of 11 skirmishers. And he also has these Persian hoplites. He has 4 of those. And then he has 3 mercenary hoplites, and actually he had 5 Persian hoplites, so quite a lot of spears for Parthia. He has a total of 8 spear units and 11 skirmisher units, only 1 royal cataphract, because I think this is the thought process here. With Arverni, it's never going to be a problem for Parthia to beat Arverni's cavalry, and these armored horse archers are more than capable of shooting noble horse and heavy horse to death. So it looks like the plan here is to hold the Arverni infantry with all of these spears while shooting them to death and rear charging with this 1 royal cataphract unit. And all of these hoplites, although the Persian hoplites are absolutely crap, they are cheap and they'll be able to hold for at least some time, while these Parthian foot archers that have upgrades and these mercenary peltas are going to be able to do a lot of damage to the Arverni infantry. So already I'm not too confident that my build is going to be able to work well here, because I was of course planning for a typical Parthian build with a lot more archers and just a token infantry force. And when I came up against this type of build, I was kind of unprepared for it, because my build consists of, I have only 2 decent sword units, chosen swords. I went for Spear Noble, 2 Spear Nobles, Spear Noble General and another Spear Noble. I also have these 6 Chosen Spears, and 2 Spear Warriors on the flanks, Celtic Light Horse just to take care of any Parthian foot archers or light horse units that are harassing. I'll keep them in the rear to keep them away from fire, and I brought also 4 of these Celtic Slingers. Firing on the armored horse archers, losing some guys here, but not really going to be able to do a lot of damage quickly to these armored horse archers, because they have a lot of health and they have a decent armor. So this is mainly just to keep them at bay while I engage his main line of infantry, basically, which is something you don't hear very often as Parthia. I'm going to use these spear warriors and these chosen spears to try to push away his horse archers for a bit, just chase them away from my main army, keep my own Celtic Light Horse away from his horse archers. Now my opponent is going to adopt the defensive position with some gaps in it. That's going to both defend his flanks, and keeping his units like this is actually going to enable him to shoot through his own lines more effectively. So pretty smart setup here by my opponent. He's going into phalanx, which is going to further contract his lines, and I'm basically just going to charge in with my chosen spears, not really doing a whole lot of thinking in this battle. And I want to get my guys into combat as quickly as possible. Now I could have spent some time in by just shortening my lines and tried to push through the center here and here. That could have been a good idea. And it could also have been a good idea to use more of my units for flanking around. But in this battle I was kind of tired of playing and a bit impatient, so although I am going to try to push through here, and I'm actually going to be able to do it, although some of my units get caught, the most of my units is going to get into these mercenary peltasts and hold them up for a while, also going, so not the best micro I guess from my opponent here, but he has a very strong defensive position, so he can afford to make some mistakes. I'm also going to send my chosen spears directly into the Persian hoplites. They should be able to beat them fairly quickly. My slingers are massacring his Parthian foot archers, and Persian hoplites are going to take some casualties on the charge from these chosen spears. Cataphracts coming in, they're going to murder my chosen spears. And I am a bit slow in sending in these guys, but you can see I'm giving orders for them to push through the gaps here. I'm also moving around here, trying to get into the these guys with my chosen spears, but as you can see, because the attack orders are coming against the center of the enemy unit, I have a bit of a problem. They won't get a clean charge and won't be able to envelop enough units. Now my opponent does something very important here. Persian hoplites, while they are in line formation, they're not very effective, and they have let's see here, they have pretty low morale at 40. One of the great things about Persian hoplites is that you can put them in a square formation. And when you put them in a square formation, their melee defense goes up, and they also get an increased base morale. So these guys are actually going to be able to hold out for quite a long time against my spear warriors. My first unit of chosen spears is getting wrecked, while not getting a whole lot of kills, but they did manage to stop these guys from shooting for a while. I am using these guys here just to ward off the enemy armored horse archers while pushing them away with my spear warriors. Here I'm keeping my chosen swords to just throw their javelins at the Persian hoplites into their flanks, and shooting at his general with my slingers. Now of course my opponent's plan here is working pretty well. I was able to neutralize some of it here, so I'm not taking a lot of fire just yet, but he is able to hold for a fair amount of time against with his mercenary hoplites. They are going to lose against the chosen swords quite badly, but they're going to buy the rest of the army time to do some damage. And over here, this is just bad micromanagement from me. These guys had attack orders here, but because the attack orders were on the center of the unit, they charged straight into these Persian hoplites, and that's going to hurt me a lot. I'm sending my Celtic horse to chase away these armored horse archers, hoping to get some of them in to go for rear charges and to attack the mercenary peltasts. So I had move orders here, going to charge them into the mercenary peltasts, going to stop them from firing for a bit, but mercenary peltasts aren't just going to melt away, and my opponent has units he can use to bring into support. Sending in my chosen swords, these guys are starting to take fire, and they're not going to be able to break through to the mercenary hoplites. And actually, what I might be doing here, I'll have to check the results screen afterwards, but since I put my guys here and they are throwing javelins, I might actually be hurting my own men quite a lot with friendly fire. I'll have to check that afterwards. Now, since I moved out my Celtic light horse from my back lines, my opponent is free to use his royal cataphracts, already getting a lot of kills, but now I can use them to just charge all down my lines, which is of course very bad for me. These chosen swords are going to do decently well over here against the Persian hoplites. A hoplite unit has died, and now I'm able to move into skirmishers, but my opponent still has a worrying amount of horse archers left alive, and these guys are taking way too long to kill the Persian hoplites. They are losing decisively against chosen spears, but it's going to take too long. I pulled out a unit of spears to get into the main fight here, but overall I have holding power, but I don't have the killing power I need to break through these hoplites. So in this scenario, more chosen swords would serve me very well, even a unit or two of Oathsworn, but I prepared for typical Parthia, and my opponent of course was pretty smart and picked a build that I think is a fairly strong counter to Arverni, because of it's unusual. Against Parthia you do prepare against a lot of skirmishers, and there are 11 skirmishers here, but what I did not prepare for was just one melee cavalry unit and 9 spear units that can hold for quite some time. The Persian hoplites are absolutely crap when they are in a normal formation, but when they are in a square formation they can hold for a long time. And one of the beautiful things about the square formation is that it will slowly make my guys envelop his formation, and that is going to enable him to get rear charges in from just about anywhere. So it's very smart if you can just hold more expensive units with this these Persian hoplites in square formation. They're going to be actually very, very cost effective, although they aren't going to kill a huge number of men. So my opponent managed to get all of his cavalry into my Celtic slingers now that they are unsupported, and the Arverni army is quickly dying under missiles and rear charges. So pretty decent build by my opponent, well played. He made some mistakes, but I ended up having the I'd say having the less effective build against what I was facing. My opponent had the skirmishing advantage, so I had to bring the fight to him. But he was able to hold my army while using his skirmishing advantage. So it's the first time I've faced a Parthian army that looks exactly like this. But I quite liked it. I quite see how it can work well against barbarian factions. Although I think it would have worked a bit. It was allowed to work as well as it did a bit because I made a few mistakes here in how I approached the battle and how unprepared I was for facing this kind of Parthian army. But I'm glad I came up against it because it allowed me to learn a few things about what Parthia can do when basically going very defensively and skirmish heavy, so quite nice. My spear nobles are already wavering although they had 100 men left because the army is losing and they're getting swamped, rear charged, not having a lot of fun here. So I wasn't able to use these spear nobles to their greatest effect. I probably should have sent them in earlier, and it was a costly enemy victory. He killed 1600, I killed almost 1100. But let's have a look at the friendly fire here. I lost 1668, and so I didn't do as much friendly fire as I thought I did. These mercenary pelters did okay, the royal cataphracts did phenomenally, but most of the kills were on chosen spears and also on these Celtic slingers. So the spear nobles did okay, killed a lot of high value units. The chosen swords did very well, but the chosen spears, they didn't have the punching power needed to break through the squares quickly enough and the hoplites to get at the skirmishers behind them. So most of the kills here were on quite a lot of kills on these Parthian foot archers. These Persian hoplites with 110 kills, that's phenomenal for Persian hoplites. So in square they're able to hold off for quite some time and actually do better than the mercenary hoplites, which are superior units in every way. So quite interesting Persian army from my opponent here. Line. I wonder who he is. Maybe he's a known player that just uses an alias, or because the reason why I'm saying that he's probably a good player is because the build was so focused on just having the decisive skirmishing advantage, going very light on the melee cavalry because you don't really need to counter the melee cavalry of Arverni with anything other than horse archers and skirmishers. And by also having these, he didn't have 9 spears, he had 8 spears, and having these 8 spears that were able to hold my infantry units while he got the damage done that he needed to do. So good game, well played to my opponent, and I'll see you again on the battlefield.